Hi friends, this article is taken from today's The Hindu newspaper editorial page dated 9th of July. This article talks about recent troops withdrawal from recent US troops withdrawal from Afghanistan. Listening to the article will give you opportunity to understand writer's opinion firsthand. So let's begin. Traveling prospects in Afghanistan. As the reality of the US withdrawal takes hold, the future will depend on Taliban Kabul dynamics and Pakistan's role. Last week, on Friday, the United States handed over the Bagram Air Base to the Afghan authorities, making a symbolic end to its military presence. As US forces complete their withdrawal well ahead of the September 11 deadline announced by American President Joe Biden on April 14. A familiar air of uncertainty surrounds Kabul as the Afghans ponder over the future of their land ravaged by conflict for nearly 50 years. Afghanistan's immediate neighbors are also faced with a new challenge: how to persuade the Taliban against overplaying their military hand. A costly misadventure. Could anyone have predicted that the US commenced its military intervention in Afghanistan in October 2001? That it would get embroiled in an endless war for 20 years and to exit safely? It would have to negotiate with Taliban, the same entity that it went in to punish. It has been a costly lesson. The war effort has cost $980 billion, over 2,400 US soldiers, plus 1,144 allied troops, and 388 private military contractors have lost their lives. It also spent $143 billion on reconstruction. About $90 billion went for the Afghan army, police, and other security forces. $36 billion for governance and economic development activities. The rest of the international community contributed an equivalent amount, and the balance on counter narcotics and humanitarian relief works. Yet, the real price has been paid by the Afghans. The 20-year war has claimed the lives of nearly 50,000 Afghan civilians and nearly 70,000 Afghan security forces, a majority during the last 7 years. Add it to another 60,000 Afghan Taliban, and the scale of Afghan human loss becomes evident. There have been gains too. In 2001, there were 900,000 boys in school. Today, 8 million children attend school and a third are girls. Literacy is up from 12% in 2002 to 35%. Life expectancy from 40 to 63 years. Urbanization is 26% and 70% of the population watch TV. From 320 miles of paved road in 2002, today tarred, tarred roads cover 10,000 miles. Infant mortality rates are down from 20% by over half. With a median age of 18.5 years, a majority of Afghans have grown up in post-Taliban era. Today, they bear the brunt of 130-day Taliban IS Khorasan attacks, the highest since the US ended combat operations in end 2014. Tomorrow, even these limited gains are at risk. Taliban gains legitimacy. For US President Bush, the objective was to build a stable, strong, effective, governed Afghanistan that won't degenerate into chaos. As the US shifted from counter-terrorism to counter-insurgency, Shades of Vietnam begin to emerge. To Hamid Karzai's credit, he saw the writing on the wall when he protested about the night raids and warned the Americans to either take the fight to the, to the safe havens and sanctuaries across the Durand line or make peace with the Taliban. But it only showed his relations with the US. Eventually, US President Barack Obama diluted the objective of preventing Afghanistan from becoming a safe haven for global terrorism. He oversaw a successful operation to eliminate Osama bin Laden in 2011, implemented an unsuccessful military surge, concluding with an end to combat operations in 2014, and Taliban opened the Doha office in 2013. US President Donald Trump saw himself as a deal maker and in 2018 initiated direct negotiations with Taliban. Ambassador Jalmay Khalilzad, US Special Representative for Afghanistan Reconciliation, began by setting out four elements: a ceasefire, cutting ties with Al Qaeda and other terrorist groups, intra Afghan peace talks, and a withdrawal of all foreign military forces, declaring that nothing is agreed till everything is agreed. Within months, the Taliban had whittled down the US demand till it got what it wanted: a withdrawal timeline not linked to other factors. In addition, the Taliban managed to get the US to push Kabul government to release over 5,000 Taliban cadres in custody. In short, US ended up legitimizing the Taliban at the expense of the government in Kabul that they had worked to create and support. US President Joe Biden was no stranger to the Afghan dossier. He was convinced that the US had to exit from this quagmire of forever wars. The US may have decided that it had no military options, but the Taliban are still pushing ahead militarily. From less than a fifth today, over a third of Afghanistan's over 400 districts are under Taliban control. The day after the exit from Bagram, 13 districts in Badakhshan, Takhar, Paktia, and Kandahar fell to the Taliban, adding to the 50 that have fallen since May. In many cases, the locals manning the security post and checkposts have just surrendered. From villages and towns, there is already a move towards the cities. Intra Afghan talks in Doha have been in limbo for months. Question about the future. General Austin S. Miller, the US commander in Afghanistan, indicated in a recent press conference: civil war is certainly a path that can be visualized if it continues on this trajectory. Dr. Abdullah, chairman of the High Council of National Reconciliation, warned on June 30. The truth is, today the survival, security, and unity of Afghanistan is in danger. Ironically, the most vocal critics of the US overstaying in Afghanistan and hinting that the US would never leave are the ones now blaming the US for a hastily and irresponsible withdrawal. In coming months, as uncertainties mount, there will be increasing Taliban presence in the countryside as the Kabul government concentrates on ensuring security in urban areas and of the road network. The Taliban military strategy has been to target districts and enable them to surrender provincial capitals. The clutch in the northeast, including Badakhshan, Takhar, Kunduz, and Baghlan, enable them to control the Afghanistan Tajikistan border and the Wakhan corridor that links to China. In the east, They exert control in Ghazni, Jabul, and Paktia, while the Haqqani network is active in Khost and Paktia, and the ISK in Nangarhar, Kunar, and Laghman. Further south, the Taliban control large parts of Kandahar, Helmand, and Faraj, bordering Iran. As the reality of the US withdrawal takes hold, how events unfold by end 2021 depends on three factors. First, have the Taliban changed their ideological colors? The US in recent years and Pakistan for much longer has been pushing this line, but the Taliban leadership has given no clues about it. Related to this question is the question of Taliban unity. Distances have grown between the Quetta Shura, the Doha negotiators, and the fighters who want to guard their individual preserves. This works as long as everyone is pursuing the military option. But when it comes to power sharing, who calls the shot? Or does it lead to no power sharing? Second, can the Kabul regime present a unified front? If the leaders in Kabul and the government continue snipping at each other, it will adversely impact the integrity of the chain of command of the Afghan security forces. If opportunistic leaders attempt to strike their own deals with the Taliban, it will only hasten the collapse, and even Western funding will dry up. The Pakistan factor. Finally, is Pakistan still seeking strategic depth in Afghanistan, or has it realized that a Taliban dominated Kabul will be a magnet for its own homegrown extremists as well as those from the neighborhood? Can it persuade the Taliban that its legitimacy will be at risk unless it shares power? Pakistan's influence will weaken once the Rehbari Shura decides to move back from Quetta to Afghanistan. History tells us that in Afghanistan there have only been winners and losers, seldom any lasting compromises. Now about the author. Rakesh Sood is a former diplomat and presently distinguished fellow at the Observer Research Foundation.